Hello and welcome to News Center. I'm Parikshit Luthra. Abortion rights, inflation, foreign policy are some of the key talking points in the U.S. as the nation heads to midterm elections next week. All 435 seats of the House of Representatives, about a third of the Senate seats and crucial governor positions are up for grabs. The Republicans would be seeking to snatching control of the Senate, which presently is controlled by the Democrats. That's not all. If they succeed in wresting control of the House of Representatives, it would embolden the Republicans' 2024 campaign. President Joe Biden's approval ratings are ticking higher, but only 40% of Americans approve of his performance. The Republicans are gaining momentum as well, and the elections are pointing to a cliffhanger across several states. Sanjana Udayveer explains the significance of the midterm election and how it could impact the next U.S. presidential election in 2024.
Early voting has begun across America for the midterm elections. As things stand, the Democrats control two branches of the government. Joe Biden in the White House gives them control of the executive. And they hold a majority in both the House of Representatives and Senate, giving them control over the legislature. But that could all change. 2 years after the presidential elections and 2 years before the next one, Americans get to choose their lawmakers. Each state has 2 senators whose term lasts for 6 years. Congressmen, on the other hand, serve 2-year terms. This election, all 435 seats in the House of Representatives are up for grabs, while only 1/3 of seats available in the Senate will be contested on the 8th of November. This year, the Republicans need a net gain of just 1 Senate seat and 4 House seats to control the chamber. Opinion polls show Democrats will most likely lose control of the House, which they have held since 2018. However, they could still retain control of the Senate, and they are rolling out the big guns.
The only way to save democracy is if we, together, nurture it and fight for it. And that starts with electing people who know you and see you and care about you.
A handful of races can determine who gets control of the Senate. Let's start with Arizona, which was a Republican stronghold till 2020. Incumbent Democrat Mark Kelly is up against Republican Blake Masters. According to recent polling, Kelly is leading Masters by low single digits, and this race could go either way. A key battle in Pennsylvania is another one to keep an eye on. Reality TV star Mehmet Oz, popularly known as Dr. Oz, is up against Democrat John Fetterman. Dr. Oz is facing multiple scandals, and he was a longtime resident of New Jersey, which may not play well with voters in Pennsylvania. John Fetterman suffered and overcame a stroke recently, but many Republicans are questioning if he is fit for office. Another pivotal state could be Georgia, where Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock and Republican candidate Herschel Walker are in a tight race. Incumbent Warnock is a pastor who turned to politics just last year. Herschel Walker is a former American football player whose campaign has been rocked by controversy. Walker is opposing abortion, but multiple women have come forward to say he paid for their abortion.
And if a candidate's main qualification is that he's going to be loyal to Donald Trump, it means that he's not really going to be thinking about you and your needs. And you deserve better.
Rising inflation, immigration, and abortion rights are the issues that could swing these midterm elections.
The big issues that have roiled the campaign have been, of course, record high inflation and notably very high gas prices. Gas prices correlate very closely to party performance in the United States, and so the Democrats are on the ropes here. The other issues that have been on the table, one has been crime.
These elections are crucial for President Biden. If Republicans take control of both the House and the Senate, it will be a body blow to his legislative agenda. In Mumbai with Sanjana Udayveer, Arundhati Ramanan.
All right, let's open this up. We have Sean Trende, senior election analyst at Real Clear Politics, and we're also joined by journalist Craig Gilbert. Craig has been the Washington bureau chief of a prominent newspaper in the United States. Sean, if I can begin with you first, give me a sense of where the race stands, the midterm race stands as of now.
Well, as your polling that you put up indicates, a lot of these Senate races are on a razor's edge. You have an unpopular incumbent, but probably the worst collection of Republican candidates that I've seen in my 20 years covering elections. So that really could go both ways. The House of Representatives, I think most people agree, is heavily tilted towards the Republicans. So that's going to be tough for Biden's agenda, but maybe he'll still have the Senate to push through nominees and judges.
Right. Craig, to get you in, this is a very important verdict, a midterm verdict in a way for Joe Biden. Give us a sense of the legislations, the work that he's done that could be at stake. Republicans have already said that they would like to begin an inquiry into Hunter Biden's links with other countries in case they do get a majority in both houses.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Biden actually got significant pieces of his agenda through in these 2 years, despite, the slenderest of margins in both chambers of Congress. So, the impact will be felt if the Democrats lose Congress across several fronts. I mean, you've got the legislation they've already passed, and implementing that legislation will become a lot more difficult with the other party in control of Congress. You mentioned all the investigations that Republicans will initiate, which can be paralyzing to the executive branch. And then you've got, just sort of the looming specter of the next presidential election with questions about, Joe Biden, whether he'll only serve one term or not, whether he will run for his own party's nomination at his age. And the legacy of this election will be felt in part by how the 2024 presidential election is conducted, because these close states where you have close races for governor are also states that are presidential battlegrounds, and which party controls those states will have an impact on how the presidential race in 2024 is conducted in those states.
Right. Coming back to you, Sean, give us a sense of the states where the fight will be almost a photo finish or very, very close. The states that you would be watching out for.
Yes. So I think the House is a national race, obviously. So it's, you'd look at Indiana, which has a close race and closes first. The polls there close first. So for the House, that's going to be my keystone. For the Senate, it really is the races that you all ran through earlier: Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. If you're looking for upsets on either side, something that suggests the bottom has fallen out for one party or the other, the Ohio Senate race is one where, and the Wisconsin Senate race, those are ones where if the Republicans underperform, they could lose those Senate seats. On the other hand, if the Democrats have a truly atrocious night, a race in New Hampshire could fall towards the Republicans, giving them a solid majority in the Senate.
Right. Craig, coming to you, we believe more than a dozen candidates in this election, Republican candidates, are being backed by Donald Trump. If they perform well, what will this mean for Donald Trump's chances in 2024?
Well, if a Trump-backed candidate, for example, gets elected governor in one of these key battlegrounds, then you're going to see an effort on the part of the Republican Party to, change the voting rules, change the election administration based on, their perception of the process. And you're going to have, there's a lot of fear, obviously, among Democrats that will, put Republicans in a position to, tilt the Republican results in 2024 and make it easier for Donald Trump or the Republican Party to win those presidential states. I mean, one thing, the newspaper that I work for is in Wisconsin, and, we mentioned a few of these battlegrounds. I think one thing that is hard to appreciate from outside the country is just how small the playing field has become in the United States. And it's truly just a handful of states, a handful of contests and a handful of states that are truly competitive, that will be decided by a relative handful of votes that are going to determine not only control of the Senate, but control of the government in these key presidential battlegrounds.
Right. In terms of the issues that could be impacted in days to come, for example, abortion rights, Sean, what really has been the campaign message across the United States, the opinion when it comes to Republicans, what they have been saying? We believe that depending on how this race ends on the 8th of November, the abortion rights could change in several states, and this could be impacted for women.
Yeah, that's right. In June, the Supreme Court of the United States overturned an old precedent called Roe v. Wade, which prohibited states from doing much in the way of regulating abortion, especially early in a woman's pregnancy. That issue has now gone back to the states, and states are basically free to legislate as they see fit. So in a lot of these states where you currently have, say, a Republican legislature or a Democratic governor, not much has changed. But if you end up with a good Republican night where Republicans take control of a lot of these states, they could come in and restrict abortion rights in these states further. There are referenda in a couple of key states, including Michigan, on updating the state's constitution and liberalizing old abortion laws that were on the books pre-Roe. That is something that I think Democrats are very much looking forward to, is something to put the issue agenda on their terms in voters' minds while they're voting, as well as just kind of shifting the mindset away from things like inflation and crime and towards women's rights.
Right. Sean, if I would like to ask you about Real Clear Politics, what do the opinion polls say about the chances for the Democrats right now, the Republicans, and what can change in the next few days in the run-up to the election?
Well, I think at this point you see momentum on the Republican side. A lot of these races really are breaking towards Republicans. In the House of Representatives, again, I think most serious analysts agree that barring a fluke in the polling, that the House is gone, that the Republicans are going to win it. The Senate, because of these horrible Republican candidates, and there really is no other way to put it, it's clear that there is momentum on the Republican side. Whether these Republicans overtake their Democratic opponents by Election Day, we don't know. If that momentum shifts by Election Day, Democrats would probably keep the Senate. But if it continues, you would be looking at unified Republican control of Congress.
Right. Craig, if I can come back to you. Now, this is about the inquiry into the January 2021 Capitol riots. An inquiry had been launched by the Democrats. What could happen to it in case Republicans do better in the midterms?
Well, I think, that certainly changes everything. I mean, if the Republicans, as Sean noted, are widely expected to take back the House, even if they don't take back the Senate. And so you're not only going to see, on sort of ongoing inquiries and investigations undertaken by Democrats stalled, but you're going to see a whole new set of investigations and inquiries undertaken by Republicans, with Republicans in control of both chambers.
Now, in terms of the sentiment and the opinion about some of the issues, the stand that Republicans are taking in their campaign pitches on immigration, religious rights, violent crime, foreign policy, what has been the sentiment and ground opinion about these issues? Craig.
Well, I mean, just to take one example that's come up before, crime, it's often comes up in elections. It's an issue in which it's sort of typical to see Republicans running what, we used to call law and order campaigns, tough on crime campaigns. That has had some resonance in this election, because we've seen, a big surge in the murder rates in many American cities. We saw kind of urban unrest a few years ago in many American cities. And so Republicans, I think, have pretty effectively used this issue to sort of beat up on their Democratic opponents in key states, including my state of Wisconsin, and that Senate race, where their candidates who've made comments critical of the police. Republicans have used that against them. So that's an example of an issue which may not be number one in an opinion poll. The economy and inflation are number one in the polling. But it's an issue that ranks high enough and is kind of salient enough for enough voters that it's playing a role in these campaigns.
Right. Thank you very much, Craig Gilbert and Sean Trende, for joining us here, giving us your view on the race for the midterm elections in the United States. What's at stake for Joe Biden and also Donald Trump over here? We're going to take a short break, but don't go anywhere. We'll get you more news from around the world. China has locked down the area around Foxconn Technology Group's main plant, which is home to the world's largest iPhone factory. Details when we are back.